The Owen Centre at the heart of East Kilbride. So, thanks everyone for coming. Again, apologies for the delay with a few technical issues, as we always do. It's part of grassroots, so it's all part of the course. Just to give you a wee bit of format about the night's event, so how it's going to work is we'll start off hearing from each of our respective fantastic speakers, I might add. Following with that, we'll have the important part of the question and answer session, where we'll be taking questions from everyone in the room here tonight, and indeed from people watching, streaming across the India Live service and indeed our own Facebook page. Then after that, we'll also have a closure speech from maybe our speakers and stuff, depending on time permitting. We won't be having a break throughout the session, so if you need to move about, if you could try and do it with as less disruption as possible, but make sure you take advantage of all these fantastic cakes and sweets that were brought for you tonight, and indeed teas and coffees. Keep yourself charged up. So obviously tonight's event is on the subject of For Women for Independence. We're proud to say Yes East Kilbride have been in partnership with Women for Independence since 2014 and probably just before then. We've also hosted nights in the past, but none for a while, so we're really privileged to have the team back in town to be back in Yes East Kilbride tonight. Funnily enough about this is we had some comments on our social media saying, why have you got a Women's for Independence night? I mean, surely the independence issue hasn't come down to gender. Okay, fair enough, good question. Actually, I would totally disagree with that on that front. I mean, we've been privileged in East Kilbride that, through all levels of government, we've got our MP, our MSP, and many councillors in and around that support the town are all women. And that's, it's a fantastic achievement. Of course, we've got a First Minister who's also a woman, but there is an element in me, and again, you might not all share that. I think there's an element of papering over the cracks in that issue, because sometimes overcast that maybe women have prevailed so much more within society than we tend to think about. And it's something I've been fairly ignorant of the past, not intentionally, but I hadn't realised that some of the challenges that women still face in society of prevalence. There's a long way to go on that front, which I'm not going to answer that any further. That's what the great team of speakers are here for to discuss. So, without further ado, we'll go on to our first speaker of the night. Our first speaker was also involved directly in the Snowdrop campaign of 1996, which set about the banning of handguns following the horrific Tulbure massacre. Without any further delay, our first speaker of the night, ladies and gentlemen, Mrs. Rosemary Hunt.
Thanks, Paul. When I agreed to come along, it's lovely to see you all, and when I agreed to come along, Paul was asking, what do you think you might talk about? And I was thinking, well, the long road to independence. And then I read his surname, and of course it's Paul McCartney, and I'm not kidding, I'd actually written down subconsciously the long and winding road to independence. So I genuinely didn't mean to make that joke, but I quite amused myself when I read it again. So it's really nice to be with you, and what I thought I would do, we've got Mairi and I are doing a wee bit interactive, or Mairi's going to be doing a wee bit of interaction with you. So what I thought I would do is frame Women for Independence, where we've come from and where we're going, or where we think we're going, and how we need women and grassroots, but also community and grassroots to take things forward. So of course, Women for India was started during the independence campaign. It was built on the wave of enthusiasm, built to be inclusive of all women across every sector, focusing on independence, but focusing on issues that are relevant for women. And we want independence because we think an independent Scotland will be better for women. So we think it'll be better for everyone, but in particular, we think it's going to give a lot back to women. And our full title, Independence, Women for Independence and Independence for Women, I think gives you that full idea and helps you to appreciate that full idea. So, following the 19th of September, when probably everyone was still crying or in their bed and felt like, you'd lost, you were suffering grief, I think we've all been there, we all felt the same because we'd passionately taken ourselves into that campaign, indie warriors, left, right and centre, and I don't think any of us could believe it hadn't happened. And Women for Independence took that energy forward. We decided, we thought all hope is not lost. And so just literally a few months after the campaign was over, or a couple of months after, we had our first AGM, and 1,000 women filled a church in Perth. I mean, who would have thought it 5 years ago or 6 years ago that 2 months after losing the independence referendum, you'd have 1,000 women there desperate to take that energy and to use the enthusiasm that we had gained during that, to think of ways we could take forward a picture of Scotland that we could paint if we were independent moving forward. And since then we really haven't stopped. I think some grassroots elements have kind of been sitting about waiting for people to tell them what to do. Women Friendly haven't really done that. We've had groups of women who've kept active the whole way through. We've had several campaigns. Just to run through a few of them with you, and I'm sorry if I'm preaching to the converted if you're members, but I know there's a lot in the room who maybe don't know everything that we've been through or we've done. So the first large campaign was to get the super prison that was being suggested for Greenock for women banned or dismissed, if you like, that proposal dismissed. So that was going to cost £100 million, and it was going to put all women prisoners into that one location. So we got agreement from the Scottish Government not to proceed with that. But better than that, we then started our Justice Watch and Justice campaigns. So lots of groups of women around the whole country went into courtrooms to see how women were being treated and to get some ideas of how the justice system works or in fact doesn't work for women. We campaigned towards having women, the presumption that women should not be sent to prison if the length of sentence would be a year or less. So if you think about it, women being sent to prison, generally there's reasons they're there in the first place. The majority of women who have a problem. They're either in prostitution for one reason or another and being dragged into that, and they have alcohol or drug issues. And if you take those women, put them in prison, they're also often the main caregivers at home. So you're taking that person away, there's no support, their children are then potentially put out to foster family, there's not, or sometimes the other half is there, but often they're taken away. And after just 12 weeks, if you're in prison, you can lose your house. So there's a massive impact that we have by putting women to prison for a short period of time. In addition, 80% of women are there for 6 months or less, so it's happening to the majority of them. So we really championed that cause, and we did, I think, have a large part to play in the Scottish Government reviewing that system, and in fact they're now looking at removing the 1-year presumption for both men and women. So the men have got something out about us campaigning as well. One of the next areas that's been really successful for us is one of our other colleagues on National Committee, Mairi and I are in the National Committee, Margaret Young. She was looking into sanitary protection or provision for women in maternity wards. So the most wards in the country don't offer that, and that's something that we feel is a bit of a human right for women, and often something that a lot of women can't afford or too embarrassed to ask for. So she started looking into that and championing that, and that's been taken forward. And then of course when we heard about the baby boxes, we thought it was a natural progression to ask for sanitary provision to be put in the baby boxes, and we managed to get that successfully agreed. And then now further, you'll probably have heard that there is new legislation, there's a trial group in Aberdeen, but there's new legislation coming forward to offer free period products in schools and colleges throughout the whole country. And we're leading the world on this, nowhere else has done that. And that's something that's come directly from women in our groups who've thought about these issues and looked at ways of progressing that, taking these issues forward. Victoria, who potentially was going to be coming tonight and then couldn't manage because she's dashed off to Catalonia, all right for some. She has also set up a survey on this issue, period poverty survey, and at the moment it's the largest interactive survey, not just in Scotland, but in the whole of the UK. We've had over 1,000 respondents to that survey, which is an amazing success story. And we have a huge amount of evidence that we can then use in order to justify why we're spending public money in order to alleviate period poverty for people. So again, a massive success, I believe, for women, women for indie women, and for women generally. Over the last year since our AGM, we've also been thinking ahead. What's next? What do we see in our Scotland as we build it? And at our AGM, we decided we would work on what we call our Womanifesto. So we've had 4 different areas that we've been focusing on this year: food, human rights, health and well-being, and economics. So we're looking at these areas, important to everyone, but how they particularly affect women. So how do we really relate to food again? You know, we have a massive disconnect in Scotland with our food. There's no supply chain. Everything is done through supermarkets. There's very little local. There's no way of transporting stuff anymore from the farmer to your local person. It's all diverted to the supermarkets, and the supermarkets are there then in control. So these are massive issues. Children don't know where their food comes from. They don't really relate packet sausages to the wee pig out the street. So I tried to show nice pictures of pigs to the sun when they asked for sausages. But anyway, human rights, massive issue, and obviously with the EU Brexit situation, I'm sure Taz may well speak at more length on this, but I am really scared about the prospect of Westminster Tory government being in charge of our human rights, and that's for everybody, not just for women, but particularly for women, because an awful lot of the protections that have come in through Europe have protected women. It's, lower earning jobs are particularly taken by women, and therefore these sort of things are going to impact more harshly on us. So, moving on to that EU debate. From my point of view, I was always worried that we aligned too closely our own independence with the European debate, because I strongly believe that we should be an independent country in or out of Europe. For me, I'm quite happy that we are capable of running our own country. If that is within the aspect of the European Union, that is fine. If it's out with, that is also fine. And I feel, hindsight is the perfect science. If the First Minister had known Theresa May was about to announce a snap general election, would we have announced Indy 2? Probably not. But I think she, more than almost any of us in this room, would be wanting to have thought she'd made the right decision at the time, given the information at the time. And so yes, maybe we would have done things differently, but what we need to now do is look at where we're at and how we move forward from that, and how we make the most going forward from that. So how do we get along this winding path? A bit of a song, but so for me, the grassroots is absolutely imperative. One of the beautiful things for me about Women for Indie is it gives voice to women, a lot of whom may not have spoken out or said their piece ever before. So we have a lot of small groups around the country who meet, they gather. It's a wide range of people, and some of these women finally have discovered a safe space that they can speak. They can ask a question that they might think is a stupid question, that is acceptable to us to ask, because we don't think any questions are stupid. So what we need are for these people to find the confidence to speak and to ask questions and to think and to learn. Because Women for Indie builds that safe space, people do generally start to become confident. They start to understand issues better. And once women start doing that, they start to build their own knowledge. They start to understand things better. And then they start to get a little bit ambitious. And that's why some women in my local group are now going out doing silent protests with their banners like toxic Tories, Tory equals rape clause, etc. And they just stand there, normally next to the Tory stall, which was great. I like that one a lot. And And just getting that message out, and then people who maybe wouldn't always interact are coming and speaking to people on that. Now, I think some of the people who've been involved in that project may not have done it 5 years ago, 3 years ago, if they hadn't had the confidence building within their groups to believe that their voice is important. So, if we move this a step further, for me, I know the First Minister has acknowledged grassroots, but grassroots, which are Yes groups, are all the other indie groups, are totally important for your local communities. We need all our grassroots activists to start getting involved in their local communities. We need them to start doing things and being involved. So, for example, in my local community, our community council, we had a bunch of money, we had £35,000 that had been there since 2010 for a project which hadn't gone ahead. Literally sat there and done nothing. So myself and another woman who was elected on the community council thought, we'll do something with this. We've engaged with the community, engaged with the high school, and in the last 12 to 18 months, we've started a young carers cookery class at the high school, which, believe it or not, Dunblane, very middle class area, 80 young carers in Dunblane. It's a lot of young people who have caring responsibilities. They're loving these cookery classes. We've brought people in to help with that. We rotate the day so they don't miss too much of one class. And we also at the same time set up a community garden, and this has been really, really successful in the last year. We started from nothing in March, and it's a beautiful flourishing garden. And in fact, last week they made soup from the produce and served it to the teachers at lunchtime. So there's a lot of interaction with that. Now, some of the people involved in that type of situation are going to start to see how you can have an impact. So small things, these are small projects. I still have a lot of that money left that we're working on for other things. And these are small things that are making an impact locally. And people are starting to see things I do are making a difference. If we start building that, we start building confidence. If we start building confidence, then we have an opportunity to allow people to see that they can be confident in running their own country. Particularly when we're talking about women. I think last time round in the referendum, women, and I know this is a vast generalisation, but most women would take status quo over the fear that was shouted down at them. I can't do that in case, what happens if? They didn't have the confidence to say yes 3 years ago. We need to give women and then the local communities and the wider population the confidence to say yes, that we can run the country ourselves. And it struck me, I know I've mentioned this to Mairi, it struck me that Carol Craig, who some of you may or may not know, was in charge of the Centre for Confidence for Scotland. And about 6 weeks before the referendum, she came out for no. And I'm like, how can you come out for no? If you're the Centre for Confidence in Scotland and you're voting now, how is anyone going to vote yes? So it stuck with me, and I thought that's a key issue for us. We totally need to build the confidence in people and make you believe that what you can do for your local communities, and that will then filter up so that you believe that the people that you put in charge in the Scottish Government are capable of running it. And my goodness, when you look at Westminster, it wouldn't be difficult. That's all for now. I'm sure we can ask questions later.
Ladies and gentlemen, Rosemary. So listen, I just wanted to say, obviously, this event, as we say, has been streamed across the internet. And if you've got anything you want to tweet or comment or any questions you want to raise, you can use the hashtag, which is the hashtag EKWFI17, and also we'll pick up your comments, so we'd appreciate that. So listen, Rosemary kind of touched it to an extent there, but with a late change of the lineup for tonight's event. Also, we're supposed to Victoria Henry, who's over helping the Catalans with their independence challenge. So on that note, we want to offer a special thank you to our next speaker, who at very short notice has come in and helped us out to make sure the night was a continued success. So our next speaker is a local businesswoman. She's an artist, activist, and indeed a committee member of the Women for Independence. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Mairi Tulbure.
Hello, and thanks very much for inviting Women for Independence to come and speak to Yes East Kilbride. I'm going to do a session that's slightly different with you. And can I first of all, before I go any further, just say, because this was branded as Women for Independence evening, can I say a special welcome to the guys in the room? I really appreciate you coming. Don't clap me too loudly because I might be giving you a quiz later on. But I want to do something very slightly differently with you. What do all of us want? Independence. I need a bit more enthusiasm now. What do all of us want?
Independence.
Thank you. That is.
When?
I'm going to ask my able assistants, Taz and Rosemary, to hold this up for you. My past job was a change manager. So to go from where we are now to independence, we need to change, okay? So this is the formula for change. C, I'm going to give you the C. I'm giving you the C because I'm kind. C means change. And I want the young ones up the back to do this quiz as well. C equals brackets D times S times P, close brackets, is greater than C. I'm going to give you 5 minutes. I want you to help me work out what do the D, S, P and the last C mean. Don't you look it up, Robert Littler, on your Google. Don't you dare look that up. The man in the audience says, don't cheat, except the children might be allowed to cheat a wee bit. Okay, so I'm going to give you a few minutes and I want you to come back with what you think the formula for change is. Because it's kind of important. We want national change, so how do we get there? Giving you a few minutes. Yeah, they're holding. I'm just going to make them hold it up. So do you want us to dance?
You got your bow and your pom-poms?
After you,
Right, so what is the formula for change? C is change equals D times S times P is greater than another C. Any ideas what D is? Direction. What D? Direction's a good guess.
Determination.
Determination's good. I love it when I do this exercise.
devolution.
Devolution. Right, this is the general formula for change rather than for independence.
Democracy.
Democracy, that's another good word for D. Diversity. Jackie? Drive's a good word. None of these D words are the right word. If you want change, there's something that begins with D that you need to have before the change.
Discussion.
Dedication, discussion, love it. All of these words are relevant to change. Okay? Direction's been given, drive, none of them.
Think negative. We can't think negative. See, we're positive.
That's it.
So we're thinking.
If you want change to happen in our country, you've got to be dissatisfied with the status quo, haven't you?
Yes.
If you want change, you've got to be dissatisfied with the status quo. So D equals dissatisfaction. Okay? We're getting a bit warmer now. So They're not being well behaved. Right, so we've agreed that if you want change, you have to be dissatisfied with the status quo. I'm just repeating this for the live thing, sorry. Dissatisfaction is D. So what about S times P?
Scunnered.
Could be scunnered. Dissatisfied and scunnered, no.
Second.
Not Scottish. So change equals dissatisfaction times. No, it's dissatisfaction is about the status quo. Dissatisfaction times.
Society.
What else would you need for change?
People.
Great word, society. It's not bad at all. Structure's a great word as well. Dissatisfied times structure, but it's not that. Not sickening. If you want change and you're dissatisfied with the status quo, what do you need to get the change?
Solution.
Yay! Well done, Robbie. Right, now we're getting there. So, so, change equals, in brackets, dissatisfaction times solution times P.
People.
Participation, I wish it was that actually. I think that might be better. Parliament, party.
Practice.
Oh, it's nearly.
Participation.
No, it's nearly.
Praxis.
Same word.
Persistent.
No, practices.
Somebody said it. Yes, Yvonne got it. Practicality. So we can all have solutions. We can all dream up solutions all the time. But if they're not practical, then we are not going to move towards change. Now remember, we're talking about independence here. So we've got change equals dissatisfaction times solution times practicality is greater than what? It's the final.
Conservatism, right?
No, it's a really obvious one, this. All of that has to be greater than a word beginning with C, or we will not go there.
Country.
Nearly. Control. The chat is greater than the challenge. It's not Jackie, but again, you could write lots of versions of this formula. Constant, no.
Cheerful. Country.
Courage.
No. Greater than. What do we all talk about when when you're talking about the yesers and the knowers? What do the naysayers say? It will be too greater.
Challenge.
No. Too great a change, too great a challenge. We say this all the time. It will be too great a pennies.
Oh,
Cost.
cost.
Okay? So, change equals dissatisfaction with the status quo times a solution times practicality. All of those have got to be greater than the cost. Okay? So, that is what we are working towards in the independence movement. Okay? Just going to ask Rosemary to hold this for a second. I'm just going to borrow Jenna if I can. Okay? So there's one other thing to think about when we're looking for national change. I just want to borrow Jenna. Put your hands up, Jenna. Okay, so I'm just going to push Jenna. Is that it? No?
No? Okay.
So I'm pushing you. What are you doing? Push back. Okay?
Like,
If we physically push... Sorry. If we physically push somebody, they tend to push us back. It's exactly the same psychologically. Okay? So now we've got to look at this formula again. And we've got to think about this. Because this is how we're going to get the country from where we are to where we need to be. We have got to look at dissatisfaction with the status quo, at the solutions that are practical, all of them being greater than the cost without getting psychological pushback. People often say to me that I'm quite shy on Facebook. I'm not convinced that psychologically pushing people is going to get us the result we need. That's why. Because I believe it. So, I'm going to ask you, you've got wee pens and a bit of paper on your sheets now. Taz and Rosemary keep wanting to rest for this formula. It's because I was going to put it here and then somebody came along with a big banner for the streaming. Okay, so I want you to have a chat in your groups now with your wee bits of paper and your pens and tell me, give me some examples of dissatisfaction. Okay, so I want you to take your piece of paper and put a cross in the middle so you've got 4 boxes. I want you to look at, what does D equal in your eyes? Dissatisfaction with what? What are we dissatisfied with? What do we have solutions to? Do you remember the biggest thing that we didn't have a solution to 2014? It was the pound, wasn't it? The pound got us. We didn't have a solution that was practical, did we? And then everybody said, the cost's too great. Cost's too great. So let's use your 4 boxes. I want you to give me some examples of dissatisfaction. I want you to give me some examples of solutions. I want you to give me some thoughts on practicality and some thoughts on cost. Okay? And I'll come back to women in a minute on this. Thank you.
so would it be the pound and then the bank and the practical side of it?
was TV license money to be used in Scotland. But as I say, that's no, they're not going to hear that. That's the ball. They've got it. They're not going to give it to us. They are not going to give us that. Because they make too much out of it. So they, I agree with your point that how do you force them candidates to go push them? So what we would do another solution. How would we? Somebody's trying so hard. I'm going to do that.
Okay, I'm bringing you back in a couple of minutes, so I hope you've got something sensible in at least one of the boxes. Okay, bringing you back now.
So do we want to say other names to help us to invest?
Right,
Is it, I mean, to invest?
back to the middle. Shout some words at me for D. What are we dissatisfied with? What constitutes dissatisfaction? Give me some examples. Yeah? Democratic deficit. Okay, great one. Clients, your table get any Ds?
Well, we've got economics, basically, which kind of covered national debt, currency, so...
Okay, economy. We're dissatisfied with a lot of the balance in the economy. Good.
Media.
Media. Dissatisfied with the media's perception. Yeah? And behaviour.
They need pull in, to me, as far as I'm concerned, they've got a free hand. Everything you hear or see, it is all one-sided, it's all from one point of view.
Okay, smashing. Bias of the media. Standard of living. Dissatisfaction. Standard of living. Did you have austerity in your economy?
Yes, we've got unnecessary austerity.
Austerity.
Abuse of workers' rights.
I didn't hear you.
Abuse of workers.
Abuse of workers' rights. So our diminishing rights as workers is a dissatisfaction. Robert's table? Trident. We're dissatisfied that we're hosting Trident on the Clyde. Yep. Any other? Okay. So the energy, the renewable energy pressure, or the crisis on existing energy. Yep.
Women's pensions and the rate clause.
Okay, the rate clause, women's pensions.
I think general dissatisfaction that we've never really managed to achieve a political party in the UK that Scotland's voted for.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I
We've
can't.
never managed to achieve a political party in charge of the UK that Scotland's had any form of vote for.
Okay, so we are I thought that was being covered in the democratic deficit. That democratically we are not voting for the government we get. More Ds?
Gentleman with the yellow shirt had his hand up as well.
A tax on the health service.
Yep.
Okay, a tax on the health service. You were wanting to...
Present company accepted politicians that make promises and don't keep them.
Okay. Politicians.
I'm unemployed.
Should unemployed politician. This doesn't count.
I'm dissatisfied that we don't have a constitution, whether it be a UK or a Scottish one, that we can actually hold people accountable for the things that they are or are not doing.
And again, that might come into democratic deficit.
But there's also
but it's-
another one coming in as well, which is also we need to look at community charters, because if it wasn't for community charter in Falkirk, we would already have fracking here in Scotland. So we're needing more community charters as well
Yeah.
to fight.
Yeah,
and it's
so
part of the
that's-
democratic thing,
so
and it isn't
that-
like- but yeah.
That's us moving on to solutions. Anybody get anything else they're dissatisfied with?
Food banks,
Food banks?
in this day and age.
What police? VAT police? Yep.
The use of our taxes to warmonger.
Yes.
The Jers report and how that's
The Jers report.
come together.
Land and property in the communities being
Land and property.
used by developers, not being used by developers, and the community had no say in what happens in these.
Brexit.
Yeah.
Our rights over land. The
Brexit.
deficit.
The loss of the green space when we're talking about land.
Yep.
Tax dodging billionaires.
Yep.
Yes.
Tax dodging, political.
Them and us. Yeah?
The private finance initiative racket.
Yep. Private finance, racket. Okay, you get the picture? You're good at this game. This is the narrative for independence. Understanding it from in this way that we've got to balance it is helpful to how we move forward. What about solutions? Apart from independence,
The money.
the money,
Our own bank. Our own bank.
our own bank.
So that we have
The Yes movement was the SNP working more with the Yes movement.
Okay, a unified yes movement. A resolution, a solution to media. Do you have any solutions, Hugh?
Rise. Strikes.
Strikes,
Living wage.
a living wage.
We don't want that.
What about a universal income? Are you putting that down?
Yeah.
Quite obvious solution is to keep all of our tax where it's achieved, so we keep our tax and we keep our economy in Scotland, and if we can help others out, so we get full
How do we do that?
fiscal capability, which we've never.
How do we
Through
do that?
fiscal power over our tax raising.
That wouldn't be easy to do, would it?
Not seeing that as a solution.
No, not yet.
Okay, but we need a
We
solution.
need a solution.
Yep,
Living income for all citizens.
yeah.
The bank,
A citizen's wage, a universal income.
This man's being ridiculous, he's suggested something called an oil fund, but how do we fund it?
Yeah.
An oil fund,
What about a water fund or a whiskey fund?
a water fund, whiskey, gin. Definitely, I'm in the gin camp. Okay. What about practicality?
the communities to work together, for people to work together and for people to realise that we can change things.
Okay.
I do believe a lot of people are needing information and how do they access it?
Community activism,
Empowerment. Yeah.
good information. Can I give you this, Colette? Because we can't hear you up here.
Hi. One of the practicalities, Mairi, in following on from activism, was I had suggested was the national newspaper, right, sponsors the Yes campaign. So when you're going out canvassing, you then take a free copy of the National and put it through everybody's door. That's the practicality of it. It's getting that actual media out there, where, as before, they're buying the rhetoric of the Sun and the Daily Record and things like that. So that's the practicality. And I believe Callum Baird from the National actually bought into that. It's just actually putting it into practice.
Okay, great. Any other practical?
Can I just add to that? I'm kind of
The
going for
media
the
again.
numbers, things you're talking about, so I don't want to go into that, but to tie into the national, eventually it's owned by the Gannett Foundation in America. The Gannett Foundation are published on their website that they are keen to give grants and loans and funding to community organisations and the like. One of the things I've already suggested, and I'm trying to be in touch with them about it, is that they should supply all of the flags that we need, free, gratis and for nothing, and take the chances that we reciprocate by buying the National. Not do it the other way around, buy the National and we'll give you a bottle of whiskey for nothing. Do it the other way around, Gannett. Show us that the National is for independence, but doing something first. We can follow you.
Lead by example.
Anybody else want to throw anything else in?
Food exports to Scotland, they do English ports. Repatriate salmon, which is the highest food export from the UK, and it's mostly sent out of London, so it goes down as an English export. Similarly, whiskey and other things that are made in Scotland, that they are classified as English exports, which of course makes our figures nonsense. So that really needs sorted out.
Good point. Anybody else want to throw in any other practicalities? What about the costs then? What do people talk about the costs? What do people think? And I'm not just talking about the financial costs. What do people talk about as the cost of independence? What do people think they're going to lose?
The pensions.
So people think they're going to lose their pensions,
The bus pass.
their standard of life, their bus passes,
Military,
the pound, the military,
job security.
The millions of jobs
Wait a
in
minute, sorry.
the Trident.
Job security.
job security. What did you say, sorry?
The millions of jobs that are involved in Trident. And I said the hundreds of jobs.
Yep. You're good at this one. You know this because you've been on doorsteps.
Shipbuilding.
Propaganda.
Do people not also tell you they're going to lose their family connections to people in England? All of a sudden we'll be divorced from our families. Yes?
Propaganda by the media is...
What else do people think is a cost?
Like separation, like the separation.
Yeah. Separation.
They're bringing
So not only just families, but separation itself. What else do we think is a cost?
They're bringing fear.
I used to be told we'd lose Queen Elizabeth.
Oh, the Queen.
Until such times I mentioned that the next Queen's going to be called Queen Camilla. No. That's the solution to that, is it, I suppose?
So the Queen.
Queen Camilla.
We'll lose the Queen. Any other?
Also
costs?
connections with other parts of the world as well. Like we're not going to be strong. We're not going to have the strength to be.
So we're going to lose our strength as a country.
Never.
We're going to be isolated as a cost. What about
We're going to be isolated if we go through with Brexit.
what about our British identity?
I think we'll be stronger.
But I'm talking about us gaining independence by persuading people that and it is those costs people talk about, and British identity is a cost for some people. Well, it's a good question and it's a debate.
The other thing is a passport.
Robert?
You see, I used to argue with someone at work about this, and they said, oh, how are the British? I said, no, that's really depends, you still British. Because you live in the British Isles, you live in the British Isles, so you can still call yourself British if you like. As far as I'm concerned, I'm European and Scottish, and Britain, just go.
Also,
British passport? Okay, we're going to...
A driving licence, well not a driver, but it's a driving licence.
You mean with a Scottish flag?
British passport.
But don't you think we'll be stronger if that we're all strong people?
Okay, so I'm going to get Rosemary to read out
We'll lose the B in BBC.
what you've said now.
Well, we should actually EU membership, because that was
Oh yes.
Lose the B in BBC.
Oh, let's not forget that one, Paz. How could we forget EU membership is a cost? Absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to get Rosemary to read it out. The point of doing this exercise is because Rosemary said, you know, as far as Women for Independence is concerned, our purpose is to engage with all women. That's our job. We don't engage with women only of a certain opinion. We engage with all women, and in order to do that, we've got to understand this. And that's how we go about our business, and it was just, we didn't want to talk at you too long, so we did a bit of interaction. This is what we need to remember moving forward. All of us take that point about a unified movement. All of us need to move forward singing from the same sheet. We need to understand, you know, and ask people if they're happy with austerity, with the economy, with the job security. We need to come up with the practical solutions. We need to keep generating them, and they need to be practical. They need to be manageable and realistic and realisable. And we need to make sure that all of that together is more than the cost. Yeah? Rosemary's going to read out as a summary, and then we'll move on to Taz.
Okay, so dissatisfaction. I'm sure there's another Rolling Stones number maybe, but anyway. I can't get no dissatisfaction. So we've got democratic deficit, economics and the national debt, the media, standard of living, Trident, unnecessary austerity, abuse of workers' rights, crisis on existing oil or energy, lack of support for renewables, attacks on the NHS, politicians who don't do what they say other than Taz, food banks, use of our money for warmongering, PFI racket and the Gers report. And no doubt we could go on for much longer on that. Solutions: community charters, unified Yes movement, proper written constitution, owning our own media, living wage, universal basic income or citizens' income, full fiscal powers, oil fund, own bank, practicality, teamwork, community activism, getting the media out there, Free National as an example, own export centres so they count as Scottish and don't count towards the Gers figures or give correct Gers figures. And then all of those things together, if they are worse, if you like, or whatever, than this set, which is the cost, you've got pensions, separation, EU membership, bus passes, the Queen, military, job security, strength, family connections, and a British passport. I think it goes without saying that the benefits outweigh the costs, don't you think?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks very much, Mairi.
Well, with that, ladies and gentlemen, not only do we here to educate you, but we entertain you. It's like a pub quiz. Sorted. Thanks very much, Mairi. So listen, our next speaker, I'm certain, needs no introduction whatsoever. I'm sure many of you are just as disappointed as I am that we don't get the weekly enjoyment of doing the day job and holding, you know, the clowns at Westminster to account, which I'm sad I don't see with regularity. I'm sure we will at some point soon again in the future. She is the founder of the Scottish Asian Women's Association. She's the former MP of Oak Hill and South Perthshire. Ladies and gentlemen, Tasmina Ahmed-Sheikh OB.
Thank you very much indeed, Paul, and thank you very much indeed for the invitation. Before I say anything substantive, well, this is substantive what I'm about to say, can I pay tribute to my fellow speakers, Rosemary and Mairi? And it is a travesty that neither of them were elected at the recent council elections, and we need to make sure that we get them elected next time round, whatever election you stand for. But quite clearly, hearing them speak with such passion, enthusiasm and ideas for the country, we are a much weaker and less strong place without women, these women, at the forefront of that. So thank you very much indeed We're making it an extremely difficult act to follow, and that always happens when you're the last speaker. But I'm going to also pay tribute to those who set up this evening's event, particularly the men who spent an inordinate amount of time trying to get these posters on the windows. Never have I seen it take so long, apart from that Basil Fawlty sketch, where Cyril keeps telling us to put the poster up, the picture up, and it takes them forever. Well done. We did offer our help, but they refused because so adamant they were that they were going to get it right. Anyway, thank you very much for eventually getting it right, although it has come down in the background. But the comedy in serious times in which we're in continues in some of the comments made by our political leaders. Yesterday, during Corbyn's speech at his party conference in Brighton, he said that we have left our divisions behind. Whilst at precisely that same moment in time, rather than looking at their leader, the Scottish Labour Party were busy tweeting backwards and forwards and trying to just press releases that talked about Jackie Baillie in not very flattering circumstances. The idea of unity in the Labour Party is a joke, and a party that isn't unified can do nothing for Scotland. So when Jeremy Corbyn makes statements about taking Scotland back, he should rest assured that Scotland is now not for the taking by the Labour Party. That's the complex situation we find ourselves in. I understand that the Prime Minister, Theresa May, current Prime Minister, for how long remains to be seen, has suggested that there wasn't enough debate around the snap general election that she called. This, of course, will be the debate which she refused to participate in on television. The debate where she refused to put herself up in front of people up and down the country, where she refused to face the people of Scotland. She must think we button up the back. And I thought that when I sat in the chamber and she called that snap general election, because she thought she was going to win it. And what has happened to this country as a result of that? Personal losses aside, and I'll come to that in a moment, we are in the worst possible position we could be whilst negotiating, or whilst Westminster negotiates, our exit from the EU. And rather than admitting that it's been the most terrible decision taken because public were given misinformation and, quite frankly, lies that have been repeated by Boris Johnson, the effort should be on correcting something that is quite clearly economic suicide for everyone. And whilst we voted differently in Scotland, and we will find our own path, as people, we do care about the rest of the United Kingdom. Nobody wants to see a relationship which we've had for centuries, works well perhaps for one part of it better than it does for the rest, but nobody wants to see that sink. But sink it will. The question is Scotland going to join that Titanic success that Boris talked about of Brexit? And I don't think we should. And we should keep that option open for ourselves. Now, in terms of the snap general election, I'm generally not going to talk about myself or the personal losses that me and so many of our colleagues felt as Celtic losing our seats, because we did, the SNP, the party that believes in Scottish independence, won the elections in Scotland. In fact, we're the only party that won the election at all in all of these islands. But what did happen off the back of a snap general election, which shouldn't have been called, that's why we had the Fixed Term Parliaments Act in the first place, to prevent Westminster governments from being opportunistic and putting the country in a situation which they did. What happened off the back of that snap general elections? Not only did it cost this country millions of pounds, the figure which will become apparent in the very near future once all the calculations are done, but myself and my colleagues lost office staff who left other jobs to come and work for us because they thought the job was for 5 years. So if any of those staff are among you, or anyone that may be watching anything that's been said today, I feel so dreadfully sorry, as should this country, that you put your jobs on the line, your families on the line, your mortgages on the line, because you believed in supporting SNP MPs at Westminster and you thought you had 5 years to do that. The country, and indeed the Prime Minister, owes you a debt, and I hope we have the opportunity to make that wrong right, because the majority of these people have been left without redundancy money. And where are the workers' rights if you're being a member of staff for a member of parliament? They are literally, practically non-existent. But let's leave that where it is with our good thoughts with all of those people. And for every MP who think 21, certainly from the SNP who lost their seats, multiply that by 5 in terms of the jobs lost in Scotland. So I wish them all well. So let's turn to my favourite subject, women. And where women are now in society. I felt that we were really coming along in leaps and bounds and in great strides until a couple of things happened. The election of my friend, as you know, President Donald Trump, a man who I wasn't afraid to stand up to at Westminster, a result of which I got so much abuse for doing so, even when he was putting himself forward for candidacy. I believe we should stand by our principles. I don't believe that man is good for women, for democracy, or for any kind of equality. And the manner in which he has conducted himself since his election is unbecoming of the most powerful office across the world. His conduct and his attitudes, which unfortunately have gained attraction across the USA, have encouraged people to start to say and think things we thought we had buried in the past. And we worked very hard to bury those things in the past. But coming to the fore they are. And that was exacerbated further by the campaign, which was the European referendum campaign, which saw people being ostracised, particularly our minority communities, our migrant communities who give so much to the fabric of society, not just from an economic perspective. The idea of demonising refugees who are running away, many of them from illegal wars in which this country had a hand. That was the backdrop in which the European referendum was fought, and that hasn't gone away. I remember asking in Parliament of the ministers at the time what they were going to do about the 40% increase in hate crime off the back of the EU referendum. I make this point because we came so far that I feel we have taken some steps back. And how do we remedy that situation? We have to continue, like we're doing today, to talk to each other, to continue that dialogue. Because when the time comes, and let's just get this right, I believe that Keta Dugdale said just yesterday, with a straight face, that she thought we should have another referendum on the EU deal. Another divisive referendum that divides the country, the very referendum that she thought we shouldn't be allowed to have in Scotland? I don't think so. We have a parliamentary majority by democratically elected Scottish Parliament, the anniversary of which we have just celebrated, who have decided it is our right to have an independence referendum, and an independence referendum we should, shall and will have.
Yes.
That's the faced with the option of another chance at an EU referendum on the final deal, or a chance to finally break away from that nonsense. Because whatever the result of that deal may be, and if the result of that EU referendum, second referendum on the deal, is to do things a different way but within the status quo, do any of us really trust that Westminster government, or indeed any Westminster government, to take Scotland on the path to economic prosperity or any kind of equality? See that poster? I don't think it will. So in my mind, we need to take this time, and as much as there may well be an election soon, I go through peaks and troughs in terms of whether I think an election is likely to happen sooner rather than later. I think perhaps for just now, there may be an element of calm before the storm. Do I think the current government will last out to 2022? No. Do I think there will be another general election for a Scottish Parliament election? Yes, I do, under a new leader of the Conservative Party, and then we'll see what happens as Jeremy tries to unite his party. But in the time between now and then, if there isn't any other substantive question that faces us here in Scotland, we should use the time and our energy and our passion and determination to continue that discussion that started in 2014 and should be continuing on into the future. Because convincing our fellow Scots and those who will have a vote in the referendum, our young people and people who've made Scotland their home, that conversation has politicians ultimately, although they will lay out the economic plan for independence, and of course, as you all know, that work is underway. Fundamentally, people trust each other, our friends, our colleagues, our family, more than we ever trust politicians. So if you are persuaded, and I know you are, as we know so many other of our fellow Scots are across Scotland, then we need to use ourselves and our voices to convince others that that remains an option that should be open, and when the opportunity comes, one that should be seized. Because that clearly is the best future for all of us. We've seen the potential economic consequences of Brexit. We've been told so many lies. We were told to vote no, to stay in the EU. People voted no and are now coming out of the EU. But we have to enthuse the public to come forward. And the one thing I looked at tonight before coming out were actually the turnouts in the recent elections, which is very interesting. In the independence referendum, we know we had a fantastic turnout of 85%. I then went and looked at the 2017 general election, and the turnouts across the UK was 68.7, and in Scotland was 66.4. However, so the turnout was greater in the UK as a whole than it was in Scotland. But the really interesting point was in 2015, off the back of the independence referendum, at that point, the turnout in Scotland for the general election was higher than the UK as a whole at 71%, and the UK as a whole was 66.4%. And that's because the people of Scotland felt really strongly about what they'd been promised and what happened. And we need all of us to rekindle that spirit of belief. I, like many of you, stood at the front of many village halls and let people feel that they could dare to dream for a better Scotland. I'm not prepared to lose that, and neither should any of us be prepared to do so. So we continue that conversation where people, and that's why these exercises are so important, where we were unable to persuade, we must make sure that we persuade this time round. And I wonder if people had felt more motivated. Our supporters of independence, felt more motivated in the election we just had in 2017 if the result might not have been different in Scotland. But that we won't know. Hindsight is a great thing. But what we have in our grasp is our future. And Scotland's future should be in our hands, and we must make sure we use every opportunity to make that happen. I am going to touch on the media. As you know, the media love me. They've been so kind to me. In all of my time in Parliament, in fact, I was asked the other day about views on various different publications. I made the point about Quentin Lentz. You remember, as new SNP MPs, one of the first and hardest debates we had to sit through was whether we should support airstrikes in Syria, you remember, around about Christmas time of 2015. And I spoke passionately in that debate about what I believed in, which was, no, we should not. And all the Daily Mail could talk about was what I was wearing, what shoes I had on, what necklace I had on, as opposed to what I was saying. That is what's wrong with politics. And it's not just, I mean, I'm everything they hate. Where do I start? 4 things. I'm a nationalist, I'm from a BMU community, I'm a Muslim, and I'm a woman. It's a quadruple whammy for them all, and they had a fair good go at me. And I make this point because I spend a lot of my time encouraging women to come forward and enter the field of politics. And I feel on me a dawning sense of responsibility that along with encouraging women to do so, we must let women know what it's like when you get there, how difficult it can be, how hard the abuse is to deal with, because it exists. And it hurts not just you, your family, your staff that have to read the death threats, and yes, I've had all of those. But we must not, will not as women, allow that to cast us back into the shadows that we dared to come out of all those years ago when we were first given the vote and now have come forward to seek representation. So where that exists, we should all group together and stand up for each other, because those voices that seek to keep us in the dark, those people who write those newspaper columns, let's not forget they're not the majority. They are the minority, but they have a voice. We have the numbers, which is why, although they may have some editorial control, they can't control access to the number of people if all of those who believe go out there and encourage those people to come forward and vote positively for Scotland's future. I want to make a comment about the National, which was raised. We should all support the independent supporting newspaper. a lot, they've gone through a lot, as does the editor on a daily basis, to keep that paper going. And we should absolutely support it, because right now it is the one in print publication we have that supports an independent cause, our cause for independence. And finally, one thing I will just finish on is about the importance of women. People say having women in positions of leadership, power, politics is good for women. Aye, it is. But it's even better for society as a whole. The best societies are those where women take leading roles, where the idea of female leadership and emancipation is ingrained in our young people, when it's a natural state of being for a woman to be in charge. Not, the rule, not the exception. That's where as a country we should be going, because that is better for all of us. And that cannot happen and will not happen if we allow these people that conduct themselves behind their keyboards in streams of social media abuse and harassment of women. Many of you may have read the recent report that came out by Amnesty that shows absolutely abominable level of abuse against women, female MPs from all political parties. Diana had the most. After that, though, as a single political party, it was the SNP that had the highest level of abuse against women MPs. And I'm not going to tell you my stories because I'm sure you know them all. But it's a dreadful, dreadful place if women are put off because we have to face these things. So our voices should be heard loud and clear. We're not going away. And as hard as it is, and as hard as you try and make it for us, those people that conduct themselves like this, we're not going to go back into the shadows ever again. Because for us, the only way forward is if we do it together. So I want to commend the amazing work of Women for India. I was there at the launch campaign in Stirling, I remember, which was a great time all those years ago. And it's a credit to them. They have continued to go from strength to strength as we wait for the opportunity to come our way again to put our cross in the box that means so much for us and our families and our future. And grassroots are hugely important. I hope now we're going to have a time, perhaps for the next year at least, where we can work on all elements of our grassroots movement. People that come from all different backgrounds, walks of life, because everybody matters, every voice matters. Every parliament should have people from every background, every ethnicity, every minority, people with disabilities, people with faiths and no faiths. It doesn't matter, but every voice counts. And that's how we take our country forward. So if none of you have considered putting yourselves forward for elected representation, you should do so. But in the meantime, until our opportunity arises, let's all of us, because we all have a command over our friends and our family, where at least, even if they don't agree with us, we'll get a fair hearing. We need to use that time to convince all of those people. So when the opportunity comes to us again, we get it right for us, for our country, for our families and for our future. And I firmly believe an independent Scotland is of course the best state of being for us, domestically and internationally. And I'll finish on this. I had the huge privilege of being a member of the Foreign Affairs team at Westminster and had the opportunity to speak to lots of different parliamentarians from different parliaments across the world. Scotland is a hugely respected nation, a hugely respected country, and our people are greatly respected. Don't let anyone ever tell us that as an independent country we won't thrive and prosper and have our own voice in international politics. Because international politics right now needs Scotland's voice of reason more than ever before. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ahmed-Sheikh. So listen, just before we move on to the next part, just a reminder that obviously for anyone who's watching the show on the internet tonight, it's entirely down to the guys at Independence Live. And, you know, they only rely on any kind of funding and donations that they can get to keep it. I mean, they've been a massive driving force all throughout the 2014 campaign and have not stopped since. And they're quite a small team, but they're really relying on any kind of donations. So I know you came along and helped us along, but if any spare change at all, you can help the guys out on the way out. Okay, so just to move on to the most important part of the evening is also the question and answer sessions, is where we get the opportunity for you to pose your questions to each of the speakers. Just to explain how that format will work, also we'll be taking some questions from the folks watching online, many coming in through the hashtag, which again I'll just repeat. is hashtag EKWFI17 for the remaining poster that is left there. So we'll take questions in a pose of 3, so we'll take 3 questions, we'll pose them to the speakers. If you stand up, we ask you to keep your questions brief because we want to get through as many as possible. Tell us what your name is, and indeed if you're part of any organisation, or indeed if you're not, you can mention that as well. And we'll get as many through as we can as possible. So take one from the room first of all, any hands? Don't be shy, don't be shy. Okay. So listen, I'm just going to ask the first question whilst we're waiting to get sorted there. So, with regards to, you mentioned, Rosemary, I think it was yourself, you were talking about how we can get more even pro-indie groups involved in helping the communities and stuff like that. So sometimes we hear from people saying, I don't know where to begin on that front, how do I get in? What's your best recommendation of how we make that channel in?
So, one obvious thing is to join up your community council, which is apolitical. Every small community has that, and if you look around the rest of Europe and listen to Leslie Riddick, she describes most other European countries who have a very small number of people who each representative is elected to represent, and it's roughly the equivalent of a community council size. So if you go to that, you'll find there's a huge number of them, male, pale and stale. It's all the retired guys at 65 who think, I know, we'll go off and go out every once a month to the community council and talk for 3 hours about planning. So if that really appeals to you and you're a woman, you should maybe think about that. But it can be anything. If you have a community grassroots group, a Yes group, and you have an objective, you have something local you'd like to see, start a campaign for it. Again, the SNP in Dunblane campaigned to get the toilets reopened, the local toilets reopened. It's not the most exciting thing perhaps, but it's something that they achieved, and we discussed with the council and they managed to get that reopened. So it doesn't really matter what interests you, but being part of these sort of smaller organisations are certainly a way forward. Other things, I don't know, there might be community trusts that you have locally as well, I just think if you've your own idea, get a group of you together. Another thing, the Electoral Reform Society, they've been looking at that. Again, I ran a Women's Day for that some months ago, and it was a really eclectic mix of people who came to that, and they had some amazing new ideas. So it was thinking big outside the box. It's like, if you were rewriting the rules, what would you want? And they had to discuss some big ideas, a big idea, and see how you could take that forward. So you could organise things like that. It doesn't need to be Electoral Reform Society. It could just be you get a group together and think, right, what can we do? How can we do things differently?
I've not got much to add to that except to say that if you want to be active and you want independence, pursue one of your interests. Make sure that people who want independence are threaded right throughout our communities in every group. Because what people say is, I know them, they're not like that. So every time you're volunteering in any small or large way, in food banks, in interest groups, in folk clubs, that is what will help to build a picture of people that want a strong and confident Scotland. So think about your interests and start there. This is my major campaign in Straven for the next 4 years, and that's exactly what I'm doing. So I am now a taiko drummer.
Thanks for that. So, first question of the night, is it Colette?
Yeah, Colette Stevenson. Can I just make a statement more than anything else, just on the back of what you were talking about community councils? I was delighted to be elected as a councillor for Ward 7 in East Kilbride recently, and I wouldn't have been there without the support of Rosie and Mairi, so thanks very much. But going back to community councils, I have recently just set up, or in the process of setting up a community council, and what I found out was within South Lanarkshire, the scheme of establishment which underpins a community council, which is basically the rules, states that you have to be 18 or over. Now, I was approached by 2 young girls from the Scottish Youth Parliament to take up issues such as school dinner money and things like that, and I really wanted them to get involved in the local decision-making side of things, but I couldn't because there was barriers straight away. However, not content just to accept age 18 or over, I went to the Community Council Scotland website and I said to them, is this statutory? They said, no. All over the whole of Scotland, there's some community councils within the local authorities, you can be as young as 14. So I have now set the wheels in motion for actually setting up the scheme of establishment and reviewing the whole process so that we've got younger people within our area, within our community, actually making local decisions.
I hope you got 50 seconds.
Thanks, Colette. Any more questions from hands, please? Don't be shy, we don't bite. First, front of you, please, Tom. Avril.
I'm Avril Anderson, St Leonard's.
Hi, Avril.
SNP, Community Council. What did I do, Tommy? It's my
You're sacked, Tommy.
So sorry. Avril Anderson, St Leonard's, SNP, Community Council in St Leonard's. I'd love to have a view of what Colette's saying, but in St Leonard's, we're all old fogies, and we need some input from a younger generation to help us. That website that she's talking about, I'd like a note of it, please, because the website we used to have, Association of Scottish Community Councils, is defunct now, so this must be a new one that started up. Can you tell me, Rosemary, is that right? No, you don't know that? But you did mention earlier on a link that you had with them.
Oh, just my own community council.
Okay, I'd be interested to find out.
Have you heard of open democracy? You heard of that? They're starting to talk about getting involved in community councils as well.
I would like to know how we can be a part of a bigger Scotland and work. We used to be a very active community council, but we're down now, and it's annoying me because, as we've all said, community is the thing where we need to move. Okay, sorry.
Okay, someone from this side of the room maybe next.
George is nice to ask a question.
George McDonald.
Hi, George.
My name, yes, George McDonald. My question is to the panel in general, maybe Tasmina in particular. Would you agree with me that Jeremy Corbyn is a socialist-minded man? And if so, would you also agree that his popularity is through his manifesto? The manifesto is, in essence, trying to catch up with a lot of the things that Scotland already has, like free prescriptions, free university, and much else along these lines. I'd also like to say to you regarding the National Health Service, I have had the experience of meeting with a lady from south of the border, a Scottish lady. She lived in England for many, many years, and so she came up to Scotland to sort of recuperate. Her husband had taken very ill, and they ran out of money eventually. However, her remarks to this meeting that we were at, she said these words. She said, "You people in Scotland don't know how lucky you are."
Yeah.
And then she went on to describe the treatment that she had south of the border with her husband's health. They ended up bankrupt and coming up to Glasgow eventually to meet up with other friends here. So there we go. In a word, Jeremy Corbyn's popularity, and I love the man, he's a socialist-minded man like myself, but there we go. He's trying to catch up with that which Scotland already has, and I think we should take note of it. And also...
Thanks, George. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you.
So listen, we're just going to take one of the questions as well, so we'll take them in possibly three. So one of the questions that have come in is from Graham Jones, who's also watching online. His question is, why are the SNP not coming to more yes grassroots movements to help winning over no voters? Okay, so Tasmina, you want to take the first one?
Sure, first of all, to Graham, who's watching, welcome. I'm here. Obviously, I can't speak for what's happening in other parts of the country, although I do my best as part of, in my role as National Women's Officer, is to go around the country and train people in different parts of Scotland. So I don't know if there's a particular experience with some particular politician you might not be happy with. I don't know anyone in my party, and I know a lot of people in my party who have not spent decades campaigning for independence for Scotland and will rock up anywhere, whether it's an audience of 1 or 1,000, to talk about the benefits of it. And if any SNPers are watching and aren't doing that and are then falling foul of the criticism that Graham has given us, sort yourselves out and get out there, because we work as a team and we will win as a team. George's point about the NHS. You know, the NHS is used as a political football far too often, and we forget that every single waking second, every minute of every hour, our NH staff are working their socks off to provide us with the very best health service that we absolutely treasure. A health service that is absolutely under threat unless a devolution settlement is protected. Let's touch upon that for a second, let alone the opportunity of independence. We actually now find ourselves in a situation where the Tory party at Westminster think it is all right for powers that should automatically come to Scotland go to London after Brexit. What a pathetic state of being, and we should be extremely concerned that they think that's all right, which is why I cannot understand why anybody who believes in devolution isn't shouting from the rooftops about this. And let me just mention those 13 Tories at Westminster at this moment in time. Where were they when they had an opportunity to stand up at the election in Scotland who voted 62% to remain? How did they vote in those lobbies as they were lobby fodder for Theresa May? What are they doing to make sure those powers are returned? So Ruth Davidson faces a number of dilemmas as she seeks to be First Minister in a devolved Scotland. What is going to be left of that devolved Parliament she seeks to lead, and what is she actually doing to protect those powers? I digress, but the point is an important one. Coming to Jeremy Corbyn, yes, he has risen in popularity. He didn't win the election, and he's certainly not won over his parliamentary party. And it is one of the biggest travesties that the whole of the United Kingdom has to face, that what's happened in the Westminster Parliament in the past couple of years has happened as a direct result of the Labour Party, UK Labour Party, complete inability to stand up to the Tories, because we were prepared to do so and they didn't join us on that journey. And yes, the good bits of the Labour manifesto were absolutely a copy and paste of the SNP manifesto. But what Jeremy doesn't know, because he doesn't know Scotland well enough, is that we're smart up here and will not be taken for granted. And we know where what we have good here, where that's come from, and we know what we need to do if we want to keep it.
Okay, so there's just the question as well that Avril raised about how do we get part of Bigger Scotland for the community councils. Yeah. We've covered that one.
Yeah, the only thing I would want to say really briefly, Avril, is, you know, as a potential candidate in the local elections, I had to go round the community councils, and there is a difference in the dynamic and the welcome that you get. The more you genuinely welcome any external speakers, visitors, young people with views or a petition, the more open you'll be seen as being, and the more different and younger people you're attracting, because some of them are very hostile. I was just thinking of what Taz was saying about knowing the reality of politics. Going to a community council as a potential candidate is a really good apprenticeship.
And just one other idea would be to perhaps go to the local high schools and invite the head girl or the senior pupils along, or head boy.
No,
Head
okay,
boy.
that's good, because I'm involved very much with the local high school.
Yeah.
I do it with friendly service with the whole of the
Okay,
sixth
Mairi
form.
says you're not allowed to ask the head girl, you have to ask someone else.
Why are you not allowed to ask?
No, anyway, any senior pupils, bring them along, or rotate them, or have a whole day with them, or evening with them perhaps, and ask them what they want in the community, and that would start to engage them. We are actually doing that at ours, although we've not really come to the meeting. We're working with the school directly, so yeah.
I'd like to talk to you about that now, because as I say, I do work with the school every week of school's term, you know.
Okay, thanks, Avril. Next, John.
Okay, I don't know if this microphone's going to cut out the lights flashing. I've been looking into Jeremy Corbyn for about 18 months, and I do tend to look at things in quite a kind of matter-of-fact way. So let me just read out a couple of things about Jeremy Corbyn. Ladbrokes will not take a bet from me now that at 4 to 1 you'll see on the internet that he will actually retire next year. And I believe he will, aged 70. I'm not being ageist, but he would be 84 if he was to sit 2 terms in government. I don't see that happening during this period of government, and Brexit especially. So I'm just going to read a couple of things out to you about Jeremy Corbyn in case people are persuaded that he's a socialist. He was brought up in an extremely wealthy household. He's got a £2.6 million pension. We've valued his house using a tool online at 1.1 million. He's not got a mortgage. Okay, Jeremy Corbyn hates Trident unless it's in Scotland. He hates nuclear waste and weapons unless they're in Scotland. He wants freedom for Northern Ireland, Catalonia and Palestine, but not for Scotland. And I'm starting to look at him and thinking that he's got a bit of a problem with Scotland. He told us 14 months ago, and I've constantly emailed him. I've got his email address. If somebody wants to tell me something that I don't think is true, I actually have to continue to pursue it until they confirm and accept that it's not true. And what he told us twice is that he'd be visiting Scotland monthly. It's been twice. And on the second occasion, when one of my friends photographed him with 19 people, I'm going to tell you what happened. One of the people in that crowd, I'm not naming a name, he's known to some of the Indie Live guys, but he's in that crowd. He is a genuine Labour member. And what he heard is the following. 2 people taking and making calls. One of the calls was, "Why the F are you shopping with your family? Jeremy is here waiting for you." And the reply was, "He's not a big enough draw." We've got a problem with people in Scotland on the basis of what I've just read out. If they think that Jeremy Corbyn's socialist, if they think he's going to be Prime Minister, I think they need to check out. It ain't going to happen. We are looking at another Tory government until the next election, 5 years. I don't know after that, but I'm going to make a comment. It's going to be a Blairite after that on the Labour side. Jeremy Corbyn ain't going to be here. I'm going to put a bet on with anybody on that. Ladbrokes will no longer take my bet. They're up to 4 to 1. They won't increase it. They're saying he's going to retire before September next year. And I'll tell you something, the bookies are not often wrong.
Thanks, John. We'll just take a few more questions for you. Hands up in the air, folks. Don't be shy. Don't be shy. At the front, please.
Down the front.
Sorry, the light doesn't stay on. Don't be afraid. Just stop.
Hi, I'm Karen. I've moved to East Kilbride 16 years ago now. I'm from Edinburgh originally. We've all got our faults. But one of the questions that I would ask is, I have a 12-year-old daughter who is so up for independence, and she said, well, we're not allowed to have another, a referendum until she's 16 so she can vote yes. But what can we do to actually engage more children or young people, young teenagers, to get more involved in what's going on in their communities and within the Yes movement? That's it, basically.
Thanks, Karen. Something we've not had yet? No? Colette?
Kathy Peterson, I'd like to ask...
Hey, Kathy.
Sorry, Kathy Peterson, Yes East Kilbride. I'd like to ask all the panel this. If we get a second referendum and we get the result by a majority and Westminster refuses to acknowledge it, where do we go from there?
Thanks, Kathy. Okay, Tasmina?
Okay, again, I'll start in reverse order, Kathy. That, I suppose, is the importance of securing what we're entitled to secure, which is a Section 30 order, to have an agreed independence referendum where the result of which should be respected by the rest of the United Kingdom and Scotland, as we did. It was a gold standard, in fact, in terms of how to run a referendum back in 2014 when we had our referendum. I think the question of if, I think our question of a second referendum is a when, because I'm going to go back to the point that our Parliament has voted for another independence referendum. It's just the timing of that that has to be decided. And I think that referendum will be respected. It's very interesting, actually, that we should remember that the EU referendum is a consultative one. And you often wonder if one day Theresa might wake up and find her soul and say, actually, we got this really wrong, we should probably just forget this and start all over again. The chance of that happening are probably nil, despite the fact that she's leading our country, the whole of the United Kingdom, I should say, to economic ruin. So I do think if and when we have our independence referendum, or when we do, then it will be respected and democracy should be respected. And that's why it's so important that whilst in a few days' time, our friends in Catalonia should have the right to decide their future, the right to self-determination. The right to self-determination is a human right and indeed enshrined in United Nations. And what kind of world are we living in that we think it's okay to ignore that? It's just not on. However they may choose to vote is for them, but having the right to vote is one we should continue to stand up for. The question, Karen, you asked about young people. I think young people are very engaged. One of the greatest privileges, and the one I missed most of being an elected representative, was having the opportunity of being invited to go into schools. I loved it. Speaking to young people, them asking me challenging questions. And they ask with such an honesty that it takes a really bad person to give a dishonest answer to these young people. And that's why I would say to all politicians that they must get out into schools and challenge young people's minds and take the challenging questions from them. When you're talking about such young people, it's very difficult, other than these visits, other than through schools, giving out their own information through various classes, to have access to young people. So then I suppose we ask parents to do as much as they can at home to encourage children to get involved in politics and be politically active. My youngest is 8, and it'll come as no surprise to you that all my 4 kids are very politically knowledgeable as to what's happening. And I think the more we can do that, the better, because it is all about them, and they need to know right now that what they say and what they think counts. That's a really important point. John, the point you made about Jeremy Corbyn, I'm not going to comment on his personal wealth or his personal circumstances, which are none of mine, are probably not anybody's business. Suffice to say that anyone in a position of power has a responsibility, despite their own personal circumstances, to practice what they preach, so that those who are not in a good situation have the opportunity through him to make their lives better. It's a mark of people who are in high political office, how they use that office to help our most disadvantaged. And that is a challenge for Jeremy Corbyn if he gets the opportunity. Whether he will get the opportunity to lead the country, who knows? What I do know is the divisions in his parliamentary party are rife. So any meaningful vote in the House of Commons, unless and until that Labour Party is united, will never, if ever, benefit Scotland.
So I think for me in the Corbyn issue,
the thing that strikes me more than anything is I was actually filled with quite a lot of enthusiasm. In fact, the first vote that he had across the party to be elected in the first place as their leader was a Women for Indy meeting. I was sitting in a Women for Indy meeting in Stirling where we were having, I think there were about 60 women in the room on the Justice Watch campaign training day, and we stopped to find out what the result, and we were really pleased and really excited by that result because we felt for Scotland that was a possible opportunity. And I feel I've been hugely let down by him, and it feels like he genuinely knows nothing about Scotland. I mean, whatever Tasmina has mentioned, but also he didn't know we've got our own legal system, you know, and you're like, hello, you know, we actually had the legal system before you guys. So it's, you know, the lack of knowledge, and it's, I think for me, over all my adult life, it's people in England, and I'm not dissing English people in any way, but they just don't get it. They don't understand why we get upset about things, and it's almost an unknown or a subconscious arrogance. They don't think, you know, they don't understand how different culturally we are and how we are a much more socially just society up here and how we think so differently to them. And I've noticed that so much, particularly going up and down to England during both the Westminster 2015 campaign and the EU referendum. We just simply are so different up here and they just don't get it. What was fascinating was during the EU campaign when they started to understand how the media can go against you, and they were like, yeah, we knew that happened as well, you know, hello. So from the Jeremy point of view, I was disappointed, and I think his own party is in real problems up here, so, you know, we'll just have to watch that space. If at some point in the future, both in England and in Scotland, Labour would actually like to attack the Tories, I'm sure we'd all really welcome that instead of attacking the SNP. Discussing the schools, it was yourself on the schools, or the young people. I think you're right, we have an opportunity, and again we've led the way in Scotland by giving 16 and 17-year-olds the vote. I would love to see that for a Westminster general election as well. And at the time, I remember people saying, oh, you know, they're too young, they'll not understand. My goodness, these kids, and Tasmina presumably in the schools heard it out day in, day out, they are really engaged and they're keen to learn. They're sponges, so they'll take things in, and the good thing about that is they're taking it in not from the main. I mean, I don't know how many young children, how young adults read a newspaper, probably almost none. But they're taking in information online, social media, and then between themselves. And so I think we just need to keep driving that, encourage them to become members of the junior parliament. And again, as you said, us as adults, keep plugging away, and maybe get these young people to speak to the older generation and to say to them, I think that's a massive thing too. There was a lot of really scared pensioners last time round, and they sometimes felt for themselves rather than for the future. And if we can encourage our young people to explain to the older people why it's an advantage for their future as well as for their own grandparents to go for independence, then that will take us there too. And the third question, who was third person?
Or if we don't get the result,
oh yeah. Yeah, okay, so that's an interesting question. I think we need to look at what else is going on around the world. I think let's watch Catalan, who are a very different situation to us anyway, but let's see how that pans out. But also there was the Kurdistan referendum the other day, 93% I think in favour. Unbelievable. So I think we need to look at how that one works through as well, and then we need to watch what's happening there and take on that information in order to, but when we have our next referendum, we know how things tend to work politically or have worked politically elsewhere. the Catalan issue will give us an idea of how Europe are going to potentially treat us as well. So let's look at those things and try to be preemptive, try to take it to them and to predict what hurdles we may have so that we've got a way of getting over that hurdle before it comes.
I don't think the Catalan issue is so different from ours. Because in the media, when you were talking about the media and you're talking about your English friends who don't understand how Scotland works, I think the Spanish people don't understand how Catalonia works.
I think you're right. I think you're right as far as that issue is concerned. But from a constitutional point of view, I feel it's quite different to our situation. So constitutionally, we are an independent. We have been an independent country.
Some Spanish people don't understand Catalonians. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yes, no.
And the media's at fault for that as well.
Oh, the media's been a nightmare over there. Yeah. So, thank you.
Thank you, Rosemary. Just specifically on that point, you know, we say we've got a difference of culture, and I think you're right to an extent. I personally spend a bit of time down south and in and about the city, etc. We're travelling, and they suffer from the same disservice as we get in Scotland. The media is horrendous. It tells them that Scotland is getting all these great things that their tax-paying money is funding, and it's not even a questionable aspect in their view. I mean, I was in Malta recently, and I met a couple of gentlemen from the north of England, and we got chatting and we got talking about independence, as you always do when you meet people. And what I noticed very quickly is that politics were very similar to ours. They were really had been left in a disastrous situation following Thatcher's reign, destroying their whole industrial heartland, and we're very, embittered, and rightfully so. And what we realised very quickly is we had the same view. But then again, they went, but what about Nicola Sturgeon and Alex Salmond and all these things, and these people are wrong. And there was almost an element where they came to a recognition to say, well, there's almost a bit of jealousy because if you can't have it, we can't have it. And that was the truth, so that there's an element of overlap, and I agree probably to some extent with the Spanish situation, that the media are an absolute responsibility for that total mindset that's coming across for people as well. Thanks, sorry.
Westminster's led one, isn't it? It's all Westminster led. It's like someone, knows that I've got a set of cards in their hands and they know them back to front. They're so good at playing these games, and that's it. And we have to get as good as them.
Well, we were finding them out and asking them very challenging questions that they didn't like answering when we were down at Westminster, and continue to do so. But the point you make, Paul, actually comes back to Corbyn's popularity, and that is because, remember, our friends down south have got nowhere else to go. They've either got the Tory party or they've got the Labour party. And none of them are going to, the travesty for them is that neither of the two are going to be able to deliver for them for differing reasons. And Jeremy Corbyn, fundamentally, I think probably is a decent person, and he certainly had as a backbencher. We agreed with many of the things that he was saying. Now as a leader, as he's calling himself mainstream, he's finding that he's having to give up on many of the things he believed in so that he can lead his party at Westminster and potentially be Prime Minister. And that's when things get really tricky for him. So from Scotland's perspective, we have another option, and we have a vehicle by which we can actually deliver a socially just country where there's more equality for people to enjoy. So I suppose when faced with the question of, do people at a general election vote for Labour, i.e. Jeremy Corbyn, do they vote for the SNP? Well, we know the old arguments, and they're true, that if you vote Labour, we still get Tory governments down at Westminster. But apart from that, what can Jeremy Corbyn's Labour Party actually do for Scotland? What we do know is that nobody understands ourselves better than us, and we do know that our future is better in our own hands. And faced with a choice, surely that's what we should choose.
So listen, folks, we've got just enough time for another round of questions. Roddy?
Good evening. First of all, I'm very pleased. This is the first Women for Independence event I've been at, so it's very enjoyable. I've got a question specifically for Rosemary. And what it was that we were talking earlier, you mentioned the baby boxes. And also then thought about something Tasmina said when she was talking about the demonisation, that everything she done, or that everything the SNP done at Westminster was demonised. They found any fault at all. So I was trying to put the two of these together. So my question is, I suppose is for Rosemary here, is what can Yes individuals, what can they or should they do to highlight the demonisation of anything the SNP or the Scottish Green Party do. Because everything, it's the old cringe factor of Scotland, everything Scotland does well is downplayed. And I'll use the example of the baby boxes, where on social media, the Daily Mail, the Daily Express, the Telegraph, they've done everything to demonise, which I thought was an absolutely fantastic achievement. Right? Doesn't matter if it's a new Queensferry
Or building bridges, exactly. Yeah,
that's a big. Just use the one about the baby boxes. Absolutely fantastic idea. And it's demonised. So my question is, what can the Yes movement or what can Yes individuals do to highlight to their friends, their colleagues, their workmates about the demonisation?
Thanks, Roddy. Another question for the gentleman over here, Tommy, please. Just before we move on to that next question, just to let you know, there's some breaking news at the moment from Catalans for Yes. The Catalan president tells USA Today that he intends to become leader of the world's newest independent state next week. And we wish him all the best.
I want to pick up on something that was said about pensions. Everyone knows, particularly women for independence, know that pensions have always been a really, really big issue for women. Even those that have retired. We know that that affected how people reacted when you did your thing. You said cost. You're on a low pension, you're a woman, and no one can quite convince you that you're not going to lose your only income on independence. I don't want to sound negative, I'm coming on to the positive part of this. That's then reinforced with the current treatment of WASPI women. We didn't tell you what was going to happen, we've now told you. Live with it. Within Women for Independence, as you have your discussions, how much has the WASPI thing reinforced the fears? Now, I don't want to ask how can we get rid of those fears, I think that's a different subject. I'm just wondering whether or not you have found ways of convincing people, don't worry about that so much.
Thank you.
With it. Thank you.
Thank you. And the last question that we'll take from the night, very topical again. And it's from Luke Jones, who's been watching online, says, have the panel get a message of support for the people of Catalonia?
Good luck. We're behind you.
Rosemary.
So I'll start with the baby boxes. I'm an eternal optimist. So I always tend to look at the positive, and personally, I think what you're asking is how do we get round the demonisation? So for me, that would be asking people to talk about the positive stories and the positive things that we're doing and have done. And in fact, I had another workshop recently where a large number of people were at that, and that came out from many different parts of the room who were working in little, Mairi style fashion. And it was about creating that positive message and getting that word out. Now, we're not going to get it in the media. They are going to slag things off left, right and centre. But I think you can individually do it. You can say to people, have you heard of this? Or did you know that? Or pick people up. If you hear the Daily Mail headline, challenge it. Get them to say, are you sure? Do you know, where did you hear that? How can you be sure that is correct? Or just give them the facts if you've got them. So I would look at the positive aspects, things that we have done, like build bridges. That, I mean, oh my goodness, I'm such an engineering geek. I was over that twice the day it opened. So traffic jams both ways. So I was on the first day of the M77 too, anyway. And I'm not a scientist. I don't know what's wrong with me. I should be in the STEM subject. But no, I really, looking at that bridge, and indeed I was, we have a wonderful friend, Pam, who sadly just passed away, a brilliant Stirling woman-friendly woman, just talked with passion, went to Rwanda, went to Lesbos to help the refugees coming off the shore, picking them off out the boats, etc. And I was driving back from her house just before she died last week in Carron Valley, which is just kind of near Falkirk and Stirling area. And I could see it from there, I took stock to take a picture. I was in the middle of this country road, which I've driven, not that often, but driven it before, and I saw that and you thought, we're an amazing country. You know, we have done amazing things, and we've not just built that, we've rebuilt in the last 10 years a huge amount of infrastructure in Scotland, and you know what? None of it is on UK money. It's all been our money or with the aid of the EU. So it's messages like that that we need to get out, I believe, rather than worry too much about the negative stuff, to me personally. Second person, where were they again? Forgotten. Sorry, I'm so bad at this. Pensions. Okay, big. I've trained financial advisor, so totally understood this issue at the referendum. One of the first things I used to do was show people the letter from the Department of Work and Pensions that confirmed in writing that your pension is secure if you're wherever you are in the world. So right now you can live in Spain and get your pension from here. Whether that will happen after Brexit, who knows? But right now you can do that. Anywhere in the world you're entitled to your British state pension. Up until the point of independence, you would have it based on your earnings up until that point, and then moving forward, it would be the Scottish Government's responsibility to fulfil whatever pensions you were due. One of the key things on this that people should know and maybe don't know is that our pensions in Britain are the lowest of the whole of Europe. Yep. Everywhere else in Europe, no, we can't afford to give you a better pension. Well, how come France can, Germany can, Switzerland can, Denmark, everybody else in Europe is on a much, much higher basic pension? So you've got to question that. What decisions have been made that mean we have a rubbish state pension and yet we have 100 or 200 billion near enough spent on Trident? You know, the thing is ridiculous. It's posturing and it's bravado to try and remain a key player in the world that actually, you know, we can move away from. So, you know, from that point of view, as for the WASPy women, it's despicable. I'm not sure the WASPy women issue was major in 2014 because I don't think people really knew about it so much then. It's really only come to the fore since. But I tell you what, we've got a damn lot of WASPy women on our side now who there might have been quite a few no WASPy women who are now yes voters. So I think that's a positive to take from it, and also you would be able to reassure someone in that position that we would not treat them that way in an independent country. So yeah, hope that kind of answers it for you. And obviously I really hope Catalan's a yes vote, and good luck to them.
Can I come in on that? On the bit about the pensions, get behind, please. You're supposed to have done that for me, Thomas. The pension bit, get behind Scottish Pensioners Forum. They were at Parliament today campaigning for us. Please, if you're not already in the Scottish Pensioners Forum, get there, please. We're working hard for you of all ages, not just us old age pensioners, but all of you. Okay? So look at in your Google it and you'll find us. Become a member.
There is also pensioners for yes. They're part of Scottish Independence Convention, so and they're one of the fastest growing groups. So yeah, there's lots of opportunities, and some of you have got more time than others. So get involved, definitely.
Thanks, Rosemary. The first subject, baby boxes, and it reminds me that we've got 3 young girls, 3 of you. One was under the table a minute ago. Welcome. What a patient bunch you've got over there. I hope you're enjoying yourselves. You're getting some information from here. You've not been dragged along, you wee souls, but you've been amazing. Baby boxes, how only the unionist press could find something negative to say about baby boxes. What a beautiful idea to give to mums, regardless of what their financial circumstances are. Most new mums don't want to declare whether they've got any money or not. Of course they don't. Why shouldn't we be giving them something new that helps guarantee safety for their baby when they sleep at night, and also gives them lots of new and fresh items? But the funniest thing that I'd heard about the baby box is one of our own media outlets tweeted, I'm not going to mention who they were, but said, this is a joke, this is a rip-off, there's no babies in them, which that was the funniest thing I've heard about baby boxes. They're an amazing and a wonderful thing, and how do we combat negativity around something so beautiful? It actually shows the state that some people are in, that they can find negatives out of this. I suppose what we do is we make sure we support the alternative media outlets that are out there, and there are so many of them, and they all deserve our support. And many of them online, and as I say, certainly more than one in print, who deserve our support, and that's how we deal with that. Pensions. What a nerve when you think about how Better Together ran their campaign around pensions. They're not only is it the choice of the current Conservative government not to stick up for WASPy women and give them the pensions as a contractual right for them to get, but also the pension age is being moved further and further away from us. So I don't think you can trust the Tories with our pensions, and by virtue of being in the same bed with them during that campaign, I don't think we can trust Labour either with our pensions, because I don't think their hearts are in the right place. Otherwise they wouldn't have taken the position they did during the independence referendum and shared that platform with the Tories. It is a contractual obligation that women in this country have been paying into for decades, quite rightly expecting to receive that money back at the time when they were told they were going to receive it. It is an absolute joke that that has not happened, and we will continue to fight for their rights. Because where does that end? Again, it is a matter of principle. Just as we should respect the rights of how a parliament votes in a devolved setup, we have to respect the rights that people have under contractual obligations that the government have with them, that they will be paid out at the time when they're told they're going to be paid out, because fundamentally, politics for those in power is about choices. And if we can pay the DUP money for a shady deal to keep the government in number 10, we can most certainly pay women what they are entitled to do, and that should absolutely be happening. And Arvo, you make the point that you are working hard. Yes, you are, and harder and longer than you had ever expected. And that, of course, has consequences for our young people who are seeking work, who can't get jobs because women and elderly people are expected to work for longer because the state isn't there for them when the state is supposed to be there for them. The final point I would say to the people of Catalonia is a responsibility of every country across the world that believes at all in the fundamental right for people to make decisions for themselves, that they should be standing up for the rights of the people of Catalonia to choose. And I would encourage them all to get out there and exercise that vote, because that's how you get the result that you want.
Ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately we've come to the end of the evening. We don't have time for many more questions. So listen, first of all, I want to thank everybody who's taken the time to come out and join us tonight. I know there's 100 million different things you could be doing your Thursday evening, so we absolutely appreciate you taking the time to come out and support both Women for Independence and indeed Yes East Kilbride. Just a couple of announcements that I want to put through. So obviously Yes East Kilbride, as I'm sure you're aware, many people in East Kilbride were informed in 2014 that the only way to they were informed in 2014 that the only way to ensure that they kept their jobs in the tax office was also through a no vote. We know of the dire situation, particularly in East Kilbride, which obviously their jobs are now under threat, despite taking the advice that was also given to them at the time. So Yes East Kilbride are certainly back in the Stay in UK campaign. And for that, we would ask if anybody else who wants to lend their support of that there's some sheets available for signatures. We would appreciate that. We also, from Yes East Kilbride's perspective, we have a couple of sheets doing the round. There's really two things. If you want to join, which we absolutely would love you to do, because we need more and more help, especially as we ramp up heading towards next year. There's two parts. Either you can join Yes East Kilbride, you can pay £1, and that gets you full access, or you just want to join a mailing list. Maybe you don't have all the time but still want to keep informed, then we'd also ask if you can give us the details. That would be much appreciated. Just a few things on announcements in regards to events that Yes East Kilbride have got coming up. On the 13th of October we have the Yes East Kilbride social event. which will actually take place in this hall. It's a fundraiser. We've got a night of comedy and music with likes of such of Patrick Rowland that's come to support us. So there'll be tickets available for that shortly. If you've got the time, we'd definitely like to see you come out and have a few laughs. 16th of November is the Yes East Kilbride screening of the London Calling documentary. Which, if you've not had the chance to see it, or even if you have seen it, come out and join us, and also we'll have some question and answers and things happening in that. And on the 23rd of November, we'll have the next Yes East Kilbride Speakers event, which will be in the very topical topic of media. So, should be interesting. So, just before we obviously go on to the mention about the... Sorry, rattled as I'm told, sorry. Is that Chinese?
Chinese?
Sorry. Sorry, I'll come back to that. So listen, just before we go on that, obviously we would want to give all the support and backing to the situation in Catalonia. I know one of our speakers obviously had to go over there, and we'll let her off because it's for a very noble cause on that front. But we want to wish on behalf of not just Yes East Kilbride, but that of all Scotland, the support to obviously get the result that you're looking for. But not just that, have the right to have that conversation and that vote overall. So we wish you all the best on that front. And of course, one of our speakers had to leave, as you may have noticed. It was nothing personal she wanted to might add. Unfortunately, she had to come in and join and help us out at the last minute, so she had a prior arrangement which she had to leave early for. So thanks very much, Mairi, for taking time to come along. But last but not least, we got there in the end, to our fantastic, outstanding speakers that we've had tonight. Both of them, both Rosemary Hunter and Tasmina Ahmed-Sheikh OB. Round of applause. And again, one last thing just to mention, we never get the chance to mention, a lot of people that came along tonight brought something more towards the food banks of East Kilbride, which are under significant pressure at the moment, and we thank everyone who's taken the effort for that. We will, as Yes East Kilbride, we can be a point of contact to help supply the local food banks. If there's anything where you want to get involved and help, please contact us in any of the social media contacts, email us direct, most of which you'll see on the details are there. But again, ladies and gentlemen, thanks again, it's been great to see you. We wish you a safe onward journey. Thank you, good night. So, ladies and gentlemen, before you go anywhere, if we have one last request, if you could come and join us at the front to get a group photo, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Try and get everybody in the group photo.
He's mine and married. Behave. So if you want to stand on a chair.
Can you expand?
Out and or out? No, that's it. That's maximum.
Stand on a chair.
Wait a minute, I'm going to hold the thingy.
I hold it.
Just see the thing on the table.
How much do you want independence? Come on!
Women for independence.
Can I run together?
Keep going, Thomas. Come on, George.
We're finished.
Back again.
Sorted.
Jordan, I'm going to give you a lift home, is that okay?
That's fine, yeah.
Yeah, I've got the card there anyway.
Is that your flag?
Jordan?
Good. Sorry.
It's just everybody's common space. We were travelling back and forward all over the place to Fairmont, Edinburgh, you name it. We go everywhere. Well, this is the first time that I've been here, but I'll be back again. Kevin's been here. Kevin's been here a few times, but I've never.
East Kilbride Centre, a university.
I was in the plaza. I was in the plaza shopping centre doing security a couple of weeks ago, but I've never been here doing this. But I was doing security in Boots a couple of weeks ago. I did actually, my dad actually stayed in East Kilbride when I was like that, a long time ago.
Oh, I'd never been anywhere else.
Back in the 60s.
Well, it's nice I have to run away. But I'm hoping that will be.
It's lovely, thank you.
That's my fallback plan, but I'm hoping that won't be the case. It's Ireland for us. Well, my husband works there. Technically, you know, that's what I'm doing.
We'll be back again for your next event.
Oh, yeah.
Right, I'm coming. What are you called if you got a